At this time, I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We do have one council member. Councilmember Schaefer is joining us by distance. You will see him. He's having some technical issues, but we can see his likeness on the screen. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda this evening? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. We'll also note that our city attorney is joining us virtually also. Welcome the students from SMSU that are in the audience, as well as everybody else. Welcome. They're here not only on their interest in city government, but also because it's a class requirement. We're near the end of the semester at SMSU, so welcome. We'll move then to the first item on the agenda, which would be to consider the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting that was held on April 9th, as well as the local Board of Appeals and Equalization meeting that was held on April 15th. The council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by C. We will move to a voice vote, and we will have all voice votes this evening because one of our council members is not present.
But I only have one and he shouldn't.
So I will call on City Clerk Stephen Anderson to call the roll and take the vote.
Lazinski,
Aye.
Molesky,
Aye.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes,
I'm going to abstain for absence.
Meister. Aye. Schaefer.
Aye.
And Burns.
Aye, that motion does pass. And we'll note the one abstention. We'll move then to agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 2 would be award of bids for the Lion Circle reconstruction project. We have 2 action items here. One would be the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds. And then the second action would be the resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract. I will call on City Engineer, Director of Public Works, Jason Anderson, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor. On April 16th, we received bids for the Lion Circle reconstruction. It's reconstructing the curb and gutter, driveways, pavement, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer on that at that location. 6 bids were received, which is great to see. You've got the tabulation in your packet. The low proposal is from A&C Excavating, LLC of Marshall, in the amount of $161,580.80. It's quite a bit below our engineer's estimate, so that was good to see. Accounting for 5% contingency and 16% engineering fees puts the total at just under $197,000. The improvements will be assessed according to our current special assessment policy. I can answer any questions if you have them, but we would recommend to award the contract.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there any questions? If not, you have the recommendation for the award of bids. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
A second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Schaefer.
Yes.
Meister.
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Alcorn.
Yes.
Molesky.
Yes.
Lazinski.
Yes.
And Burns.
Yes. The motion does pass unanimously. That was for the resolution that would declare regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds. I'll now consider a motion for the award, accepting the bid and awarding the contract.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, once again, Stephen will move to a vote.
Schroeder.
Yes.
Alcorn.
Yes.
Molesky.
Yes.
Lazinski.
Yes.
Meister.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
And Burns.
Yes, motion does pass. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is also an award of bids. This is award of bids for the Independence parking lot, the back parking lot, and the entrance road. Similar action items here, the resolution declaring the intent on the reimbursement with the tax exempt bonds, and the second action would be the awarded bids. Once again, Jason Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is the Independence Park parking lot, the gravel parking lot on that comes off of Noose Lane and G Street. This project would pave the parking lot with concrete and install curb and gutter and some minor amounts of storm sewer for drainage. April 16th also was the bid opening date for this project, and we had 4 proposals on the project, and you have the bid tabulation in the packet. The low bid was submitted by Town and Country Excavating of Garvin in the amount of $197,216. This is below our estimate as well. It was good to see 4 bids and 3 really close bids as well. So this project was in our CIP for, we had about $130,000 for this project, and making some changes for concrete and some other things increased the price tag on the project, but I know the park staff and the PAT committee and the finance staff worked pretty diligently to move some expenses in the CIP to make room for this project. So we would recommend to award it, and if there's any questions for park staff, Preston Stensrud is here as well.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Questions? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion for the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax exempt bonds.
I move the resolution.
Motion by Craig, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Meister,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Lazinski,
No.
Muleski,
Yes.
and Alcorn.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. Did you vote?
Yes.
And Schroeder.
The motion does pass. We'll now deal with the resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract. Are there any questions about this resolution? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by C, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Muleski,
Yes.
Lazinski,
No.
Burns,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
And that does, did we get it
Yes.
right? Okay. And the motion does pass. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Preston, for all the work that's gone into this. We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda this evening. And they include, consider the approval of a raffle permit for in the Tiger Foundation, consider the approval for the Township Fire Services Agreement, consider the approval for a temporary liquor license for the Knights of Columbus, the preliminary plat for the Quick Trip, that's introduction of the preliminary plat, the instrument landing system replacement, consider the resolution authorizing the execution of the MnDOT grant agreement for this project, the request for private use of public parking from the Adult Community Center for August 20th to 21st, 2024, introduction of the ordinance regarding repealing of the section of the current ordinance for bed and breakfast, the introduction of the ordinance of amending the section on one-family resident district, the introduction of the ordinance amending the section on the general industrial district, the introduction of the ordinance amending the ordinance on the yard modification, introduction of the ordinance amending the procedures in section 65-53 required, consider the approval of temporary on-sale Sunday liquor license for Mariachi Fiesta for Cinco de Mayo, and then finally, consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Number 5, please.
Number 4, please.
Any other item? If not, I would entertain a motion for the remaining items on the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Moleski,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
and Mayor Burns.
Yes, the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 4, which was removed from the consent agenda. This is the raffle permit for the Pride and Tiger Foundation.
Conflict of interest.
Okay,
Abstain.
so Councilmember Seymour Oleski asked that it be removed so that she can abstain from this. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
and Moleski.
Abstain.
And the motion passes. We will note the abstention. Agenda item number 5, consider the approval of the Township Fire Services Agreement. Jim?
Well, I saw you in the audience, Quentin, so can you kind of explain this, how it works? And as we go into next year, as we look at that new fire truck, are we renegotiating some of these fees? And I'm sure they're fair. I think for the public, I'd like to have a little more input as we have this new expensive and well-needed fire equipment coming in, which is used throughout the county.
Well, how much time are you going to give me?
As long as I'm home by 7 o'clock to catch second half timber roast.
There's a lot into these contracts that it's going to be difficult to explain in a public meeting like this.
But that's fine.
But for example, we do contract with all the townships per section. There's an equation that's about as wide as this room here that goes into it. And I don't know if Stephen wants to explain a little bit on the equation side of it that really calculates what the per section cost is going to be. And that goes out, and there, some of the formula is actually on the screen up there. This has been in the works for the last probably 12, 13 years. The contract sizes used to be about $200 an acre, $150, $200 an acre 10 to 12 years ago. And because of that and rising costs, of course, that was never covering any expenses. So it was decided then at that time that we needed to redo how this was all going about. And so the formula was calculated. It's been calculated the same way over the last 10 years. We have not deviated from this equation. It has created some concerns from the townships based on the expenses. Once again, I don't remember the exact figure for this year, but it was over $1,000 per section this year versus 12 years ago, it was $150-ish, $200. So going into, when you ask about the new fire apparatus, the aerial truck, this really has nothing to do with the aerial. That's going to be a cost on the taxpayers. We would rarely probably take that out to a rural call anyway. We couldn't feed it enough water. We couldn't haul enough water to work with it effectively. The instance that we would use it would be likely a technical rescue with a grain bin, something like that, where we use it as an elevated or a high point anchor where we would tie ropes to it and use it in that capacity. The fee schedule does factor for that cost to be billed out on a per use basis in that instance, which we would do like we would for a fire call or anything else like that. So the township contracts really go to the administration of the department as a whole, into new equipment, things like that. The Equipment Review Committee will be working on a proposal for replacement of one of our utility vehicles. That's come up for different discussion points in staff discussions about replacing some of this equipment based on these costs and things like that too. So hope I answered your question. I'm here for any other questions, but it's really we don't have enough time to discuss all of the ins and outs of the contract.
So Quentin, you may want to just, you have certain equipment that is specifically for use out of the city, specifically the grass rigs, the tanker trucks, that type of thing.
We do have a dedicated engine with a 1,250 gallon per minute pump that's dedicated for the rural area. We have utilize it also as a backup rescue truck that we have some of our rescue equipment that's on it. So we use that in case we have a multiple vehicle accident, and we use it, a backup system that we have on there, and it's worked out many, many times to be used for a second vehicle. So it's found very important to have that. It also carries 1,000 gallons of water, which is very important for that. So it starts the process on having a water supply at an incident like that. We do have a tanker truck, as the mayor said. There's 3,500 gallons of water on that. As an example, we truck in to a rural fire. We truck in every gallon of water we get, or we have. So we come back to the city, refill the truck along with other trucks that we call from mutual aid to assist with that. And as an example, we hauled 450,000 gallons of water at a fire just south of Marshall here 2 years ago, or last year. So there's a lot of water that gets trucked in and out, and that truck is part of that equation with that. We do have 2 pickup trucks that have grass rigs or slide-in skid units that are used for grass fires. Those were funded by ARPA funding and the DNR this past year, so there was a net zero impact to the city levy this last year, which is good for those. So 2 grass rigs for that, and then those both were funded by the Relief Association, just so everybody's aware on how that worked out. And then there's 2 utility vehicles with a pretty hefty trailer that have slide-in skid units that we use at grass fires too. So there's some pretty substantial and expensive equipment that we have just dedicated to our rural areas that we respond to.
I appreciate it. I think it's good for the public to hear how this works, and it helps me. So I appreciate it. Your answer is sufficient for now.
Okay?
I still want to catch the Timberwolves.
I won't keep you. Anything else?
Any other questions for Quentin? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Pam.
so I just noticed that Exhibit A, which is the description of the service area, was not included, and it's not included in either of this Exhibit B either. So just maybe having the direction to have that filled in.
I have a map too that we could provide too
Right.
of that. Is that what we're needing? It's a map?
Yeah, just to complete the agreement.
Okay, we have that.
Correct. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with the exhibits added that our attorney suggested we add.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Molesky,
Yes.
Lozinski,
Yes.
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
and Meister.
Yes.
Then the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 17. Agenda item number 17 is considered the request of Karen Owen for a conditional use permit for a duplex in R1 one-family district. This was considered also by the Planning Commission at their most recent meeting. I'll call on Ilya Gutman to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So this is a request for a conditional use permit for duplex in a single family district. It's very similar to what came to you recently at Jaguar Court. So it's a corner lot. It's a R1 single family, but it's right adjacent to R2, up to 4 units. And the building which will be built with the entrances on 2 different sides. So it's a corner lot, so you will basically see entrance overhead door from one street and overhead door from another street. So basically it will look from each side, it will look like a single family house. So it went to the Planning Commission, there was some discussion there. A couple people came and complained, but one of them was the business owner of daycare who complained, and the other person was from the neighbor from the south. But it wasn't anything specific. Obviously, the building will meet all the yard requirements as required, and all the rest of the ordinance requirements. So the recommendation is to approve it.
Okay. Any question for Ilya?
What were the complaints?
It's all our street is all single family. We want to keep it that way.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Amanda,
I wasn't
Okay.
able to be at the Planning Commission meeting.
and we do have the minutes from the Planning Commission also. So general questions about this agenda item or for Ilya? If not, you have the recommendation from the Planning Commission
I'll make a motion
to approve.
to approve.
Motion by C,
Second.
seconded by Craig, to approve the recommendation from the Planning Commission to allow the request for a conditional use permit for a duplex in this location. Discussion on the motion?
I do have one quick question, and Pam, maybe you can help us. What was our recommendation when this came up in Jaguar Court? Does anybody remember?
Pam, I believe you can correct me, but the recommendation was that the request met all of the requirements for a
Condition. I
multiple family for the conditional use permit.
just want to make sure we're consistent.
I believe, Pam, is that correct?
Yeah, so that was, as you may recall, that there was a desire to have a denial in that instance. And that was the recommendation of staff and myself, that it met all the conditions. And so there wasn't a reasonable basis to deny that. So,
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions?
And this, I'm assuming, meets all the conditions.
Correct?
Yeah.
Ilya?
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Alcorn,
Yes.
Woleski,
Yes.
Lazinski,
Yes.
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
and Schroeder.
No.
And the motion does pass. Thank you, Ilya.
Thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 18, the adopt the neighborhood park maintenance statement for Elaine Park and Michael Park. I'll call on Sharon Hansen, who's well aware of both of these small backyard parks. Go ahead.
Yes, I know I put in a lot of information in the packet. Just to note, I believe we do have Sarah Sansanella joining us via Zoom as well. She provided some consultation on some of the background and how these two parks came about, which they were dedicated on the plat in 1947. The reason we're bringing this forward to the council is we were approached in late 2023 by a property owner abutting Elaine Park about the city taking on maintenance and, in addition, maybe putting additional resources and investment in Elaine Park. And we did then have a public meeting with Elaine Park residents, and we utilized the Public Infrastructure and Transportation meeting. This meeting did occur in late February. We had fairly good attendance by the property owners, and there wasn't conclusive comments except for there was a general feel and some statements about keeping it as is. The city's staff desire is to also keep it as is. We did hear some comments about maybe fixing some holes, and if the future there would be some tree damage or things that make it a hazard for the neighboring property, we would do some maintenance in those particular situations. I will kind of add, I'm not a park expert, and I obviously was not around in 1947, but my understanding of neighborhood parks was to provide, the intent of this is to really provide green space to neighborhoods and easy accessibility so that residents did not have to go to other locations in the community. I could be wrong on this. Legion Field existed at the time in 1947, and Liberty Park did. We know that Independence Park was not in existence in 1947. So there might have been at that time limited green space in the city of Marshall, and that might have been an intent. The other thing to point out, for the city of Marshall, between 1930 and 1940, the city grew 41%. So we had fairly good population growth, and that also occurred fairly close between 1940 and 1950, where we had a population growth of 29%. So there might have been some intent by the developers to really meet the growing population and neighborhood development as well with these two particular parks in this area. You'll note on this map that was provided by the assessing office, in addition to the Elaine and Michael Park, there actually were walkways between properties that allowed access to these parks. That isn't well known by the current neighborhood entirely. I don't know how clear those paths currently are. I know they're not covered with property or anything like that, but that might not be well known to some of the residents. That's why discussions on things like vacating, selling the property, what do you do with some of those smaller pathways? I'm gonna pause here. We do have in the memo just the staff's recommendation, and we do want council to adopt a statement for Elaine Park on future maintenance as well as Michael Park. We didn't meet with Michael Park residents. That was done in 2012. Similar discussion, similar recommendation. And the neighborhood and the parks are similar in nature, so we do want to include that in the statement. The city attorney has recommended or has the option provided to council that she could draft a resolution that could be recorded with the county recorder's office with a park property. Not that anybody maybe would look at it, but we tend to go back in history. We look back at 2012 and we're kind of trying to figure out what was decided. And maybe again in the future, if it's another 10, 20 years, somebody maybe could then have a record of what the direction by city council was going forward. I'll pause and I don't know if Sarah wants to add any comments or the city attorney Whitmore. And obviously we can answer any questions from council.
And Sharon, that, your last statement, that is in fact the intent of this agenda item, is that the discussion happened because of the request this year. The Public Improvement and Transportation had a information meeting similar to the discussion that happened 12 years ago. The difference 12 years ago is that while the intent of everybody in the neighborhood, or the majority of the people in the neighborhood and the council, was to leave it as is, it wasn't memorialized into a statement, and that's what this would do, is to have it in a statement. Jim, you chaired the meeting of the Public Improvement Transportation Committee when that information meeting was held. You may have something to add.
Well, for the most part, and it was a good discussion, and I would say 3/4 of the folks there want to leave it as is, with the addition of, like, if a tree falls down or something large. And I think, Preston, you were part of that and agreed that that should be the city's responsibility. And it was a good support from the folks, and we listened, John was there too, that's how they want it. Obviously, there's a couple of folks that would rather not have it that way, but you're never going to have 100% consensus. I think the statements drawn up here reflects well of the feeling of the residents at that meeting.
I agree.
Questions?
Do you remember the conversation 12 years ago?
I do, yes.
I
And it was-
had it with Glenn actually because I lived on Michael Park at that point in time. But it's really nice to have that open space, and I never expected it to be taken care of really by the city. But
Well, and that's part of the discussion we had, Amanda, because in my neighborhood, we don't have the private parks, and I brought that up, that we have the boulevards along Whitney.
Yeah.
And even though we're reconstructing the streets, the city's gone out of the way to keep those boulevards, and I believe it's because the city does zero maintenance on them. I don't think Preston's ever put a lawnmower in our boulevards, because we take pride in it as our neighborhood.
right.
And if you go down our neighborhood, we use the boulevards as a neighborhood gathering place, and it is nice to have. This is a good example of a public-private partnership that can work well, and it benefits the private more than the public.
So I see that in there, you know, it says it's an extension of the property, but not part of it. So I know that one of them, we looked at somebody's garden bed was, what do we, you know, how do we address if there's anything in that?
I guess the staff's intention, we do have some potential private uses. We would take that up on a complaint basis. We don't intend to go out there and stake it. I don't really want to go out there and tell people to move things unless there's a complaint or there's a flagrant use of the public property, Elaine or Michael Park. I know that in the statement, we do want to remind the property owners it is city park property, but likely take it on a complaint basis, which, you know, part of this discussion was promulgated by a complaint of private use as well. But it would be much better for neighbors to solve some of the neighbor issues, if possible, rather than involving government to solve neighborly issues.
And part of that was part of the discussion too, and if they're taking care of it themselves, you know, if the community, if the residents take care of it themselves, as Amanda has said, we don't, as a city, want to go in there and really be hardcore, because then as citizens, I'd say, why would we help you if you're not helping us? So, and I know we talked about, there's a playground equipment that showed up there. That has been removed. So the structures, I believe, are off it. A garden, good for it. Grow the vegetables.
I just didn't know how you were going to deal with complaints, so that's.
Yeah, the complaint was over over a trailer is what it was, not really over a structure. So, and that's been resolved very nicely amongst the citizens, the residents too.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion that would adopt the park maintenance statement for Elaine and Michael Park?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
By Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Meister,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Mulaleski,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
and Schroeder.
Yes.
Motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 19, consider the engagement letter, the contract for municipal advisory services from Baker Tilly. E.J. Moberg, Director of Administrative Services, I'll call on you to present this agenda item.
Thank you. So within your packet tonight is an engagement letter and a scope of services from Baker Tilly. They were reviewing their contracts and asked us to review and consider an updated contract. Our agreement with them dates back to when they were still Springstead from December of 2015. And we did an addendum with them in 2019, but that was just to update the name change from Springstead to Baker Tilly. So this would, it has things in it such as increasing prices. They better define their titles of their personnel, as well as pricing in there for, like I said, for the GO debt issuances and things of that nature. Michaela Hewitt, a director with Baker Tilly, is with us here tonight to talk about that and or to answer any questions you may have.
Welcome, Michaela.
Quite as tall as the last guy. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Michaela Hewitt, representing Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. Before you tonight is the proposed engagement letter and contract for municipal advisory services. The engagement letter does include general municipal advisory services, debt issuance, continuing disclosure services, arbitrage monitoring services, as well as housing and economic development. So it is all the services that we are currently providing for the city. But as EJ said, it is based on revisions that we're doing to all of our contracts to do two things. One, reflect updated pricing from 2016, as well as focusing specifically on the arbitrage monitoring services and calculations and making sure all the issuance are including with there. With the current interest rate environment, we are anticipating an uptick in potential for arbitrage. And so part of the monitoring is making sure that all of the city's issues and past services are covered. Just a quick history for me with the city. I started with Springstead in the early 2000s, actually 2000 to be specific. And shortly after starting at Springstead, I was working with the city of Marshall, primarily on economic development, tax increment financing services. And then in partnership with Terry Heaton, who was a partner with Springstead, then Baker Tilly, and retired, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. So I've since taken over more of the general municipal advisory services, as well as the debt issuance and the tax increment financing. We do have a staff that assists with the continuing disclosure, arbitrage rebate, and then also supports on the municipal advisory and financial management services. So that's a quick overview of the contract and the services and my history with the city. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Michaela, first off, thank you for being here. We have a long history of working with your firm in a variety of areas. But because there are students in the audience, would you want to give just a very brief definition of arbitrage?
Sure. So that's a good question. Arbitrage are the interest earnings. So when a municipality issues bonds, there are certain requirements for when those bond proceeds have to be spent. And if those, so there's certain exemptions to when the arbitrage, and the arbitrage is the earnings that are calculated, or the interest that is earned on the unspent proceeds. And if they are earned above a certain interest rate, there are remittance requirements back to the IRS. Because investment rates had been so low over the past several years, there really weren't any arbitrage issues. But now with rates increasing, that there is anticipated to be those interest earnings, in which now calculation to understand if you're able to keep those or if they have to be remitted back to the IRS.
So a practical example would be the bond that was issued for City Hall was just less than 1% interest, right around that area. And if there was unspent portions of that bond, currently it would be earning perhaps 5.2%. So that's what that amount that would have to be tracked. And so,
And if those, in that case, if those proceeds remain unspent, hence earning the interest, that's what is calculating that arbitrage.
okay, thank you. Any questions for Michaela or for EJ? Any general discussion about the engagement, the contract with Baker Tilly?
I have some questions. There's absolutely nothing that you guys have done. You've done a wonderful job. But as we've done with our other contracts recently, did we ever look at another provider? We've done it with our insurance. We did it with our auditors. We've done it with a few other folks to make sure, and I'm not saying you guys are overcharging, but to make sure we're keeping everybody honest or saving the taxpayers money. As Steve Meister, Dr. Meister point out, we have just one article here to look at for cost. So did we ever look at another company at this point to see if somebody's more cost effective? Baker Tilly may be the most cost effective. We don't know that.
EJ, I'll call on you to make a comment on that.
Not in a formal fashion did we do that. We have informally perhaps come across the other firms that do this kind of work and had conversations with them about fees. It's fairly, not standard is the wrong word, but they're pretty close in general on the fee part. It's just going back to the fact that we have a long history with Baker Tilly and then Springstead as its predecessor, going back that far, that we did not actually go to that point. When I received this engagement letter, I did share it with Sharon back when we received it to discuss how to proceed with that. And our determination was, since council has appreciated our long tenure with the firm, to bring it forward tonight for council to weigh in or give direction.
With that being said,
And Sharon is also willing to contribute to
I
that.
don't want to stop you.
well, I would like to see another, and I know we had the same discussion with insurance. We had a long period with Bremer that we worked with, and they did a wonderful job, but we found something that was significantly, that could provide the same service. I believe the same thing happened with the auditor. I would be more comfortable if we had two different offers to compare. Right now, as a council, I don't think we're doing our citizens a service by just having one offer. I work in the private sector. 2 or 3 bids is not out of the question.
Sharon?
I just want to comment on professional services and especially consulting, and whether it be engineering or attorneys or IT, strategic plan facilitators. It's sometimes you don't get what you pay for, and sometimes you really do. And I think it's the people in the position, and I think Michaela talked a little bit about her experience. And prior to that, we had Terry Heaton, who I know is since retired, but that institutional knowledge is really, really important, and there's efficiency there. So I don't think it's fair to just look at rates. I think you have to look at the tenure and the experience, and we don't have to cover things over and over again. They have it, and I know Springstead and Baker Tilly goes back to the 1950s. I mean, that's how long they've been with the city. And you would think, oh my gosh, we don't need to go back that far. Well, look, we're going back to 1947 for a park as an example. So there are things that do come back in history, and I've had conversations too with the other consultants, and maybe the best way to step into kind of testing the market is to do a one-off project or bonding and see how well they do and how well they provide expert advice to the city. I would rather see it done that way, but I do think there's a lot of efficiency gained with that institutional knowledge that they provide, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I really don't think it's a good path to move forward with right now. With our financial advisor, and we've got a lot of advice that maybe doesn't get seen by the council because you see it on the bonding side, but Michaela does a lot of economic development advice, Solugen, even though Lauren Deitz and our staff, including engineering, did a lot of work. A lot of things happen in the background with Michaela and Baker Tilly too. So it could hurt. It could hurt some development agreements too. But that's just my comment, and I'd like to see the recommendation move forward.
You brought up a good one because we switched city attorneys after 30-some years. So we were with them for a long time. So I just think it's for our citizens.
And that was a really difficult
I know it was.
decision, and
I'm not saying we'd switch. I think it'd be good if we looked.
Yeah.
I'd like to weigh in on that for a second also.
Go ahead, Craig.
Because when I have a good doctor or a good mechanic, I don't change them until I absolutely need to.
The other thing I would add is, we talk about historical knowledge, but that history is ongoing. For example, our tax increment financing agenda is projects that have been in place that have a history, but also have a future too. So by making an abrupt change, that means a lot of extra work in starting over and really gaining that historical knowledge. And there's a few of us that probably have a history, but there's probably more of us that don't have a history on that. And that's why having a professional that is advising us is super helpful to not only the decisions that we make, but for the continued growth of the city. EJ, you have a comment?
I also just want to point out that this is not a contract that has a specific term involved, where when we hire auditors, it's for a specific period of time. This is not. We do have an out here, so the council could also decide to move forward tonight, and we could still come back at a future date to address that if so desired. But I don't, as Sharon said, I don't think that, I agree, it's probably not the route to go, to wait for another quote or bid, or however you want to call this, for the professional services. But it is an option that, since there isn't a term on this, and in fact, our previous one, as we said, the contract was dated December of 2015. So we don't have to wait 9 years or whatever either.
Any other input? If not, I would entertain a motion on the request.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by C, to approve the engagement letter and contract for municipal advisory services with Baker Tilly. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Alcorn,
Yes.
Mualeski,
Yes.
Lozinski,
No.
Burns,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
and Schroeder.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. Thank you, Michaela.
I do look forward to continuing to work with the city.
Thank you. We'll move then to the next agenda item, which is the C Street Southview Drive Trail Project. We have two action items here. One is consider the resolution authorizing the agent of the sponsoring agency for the active transportation project. And secondly, to consider the resolution identifying the responsibility for operation and maintenance of the active transportation project. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. So this project, the C Street Southview Trail, there's an exhibit in the council packet, but it's a connection of existing bike trail systems between C Street, going down to Southview Drive, and then heading east along Southview Drive to US 59 Main Street, shown in green on the exhibit up there. This is an existing project in our CIP for 2025. We currently have a transportation alternatives grant of just under $400,000 for this project. Remaining costs, because the project estimate is now over $700,000, the difference there is all local. So city staff would like to complete our application for active transportation grant funds for 2025, which would help fill the gap. This is a state program where the TA funds are federal and the state funds can be used to provide the match. So by passing these resolutions, we would be designating Eric Hansen, our assistant city engineer, as the project representative for the city. And we would also be I guess, as a city and a council supporting the project and indicating that we'll get the project done in 2025. So we would like to move forward with this, I guess, with hopes of getting some active transportation funds to help fill the gap. If we do not, the local costs will likely come from our municipal state aid funds.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Questions for Jason?
I just have a comment. You know, we spent a fair amount of time under the PI&T Commission, our committee, a couple years ago while we were looking at the work that was being done in conjunction with the new construction at the school right adjacent. And this has kind of been a problem area as far as getting a comfortable bike path, pedestrian path put in. So I think it's really good that we make some more effort in improving that. I think that would be a really good addition to that portion of our trail system.
Thank you, Craig. Any other input or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion on the first resolution, the authorizing the agent, sponsoring agency.
I move the resolution to authorize.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion. One piece of discussion, I need to abstain from both of these. I am a member of the State Active Transportation Committee that makes the funding decisions on these projects, so I need to abstain. So, any other discussion on the motion? If not, Stephen?
Moleski,
Abstain.
Lazinski,
Yes.
Burns,
Abstain?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
and Alcorn.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. We'll note the abstentions. The second action would be the resolution identifying the responsibility for operation and maintenance of the active transportation project. Basically, this means the city is in charge of it. It's going to remove the snow in the winter, that type of thing. Anything more, Jason, that you want to add?
No.
Questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig, or seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Lazinski,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Meister,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Moleski,
Abstain.
and Mayor Burns.
Abstain. That motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 21, Commission Board Liaison Reports. Craig?
I have none, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Steve?
Nothing.
Amanda?
I don't have anything either.
Nor do I. John?
The MMU did provide their annual report last week. I know Sharon has copies of it if anyone would like to.
I think everyone got one.
Got a copy, okay. It was a positive audit, and I think it was a good report.
See?
I have nothing.
And Jim.
I have nothing.
Then we'll move to council individual items. Jim?
First, I'm going to start with, we had a meeting last week, I believe it was last Monday, over with trees on Whitney Street. And it was a good meeting, a good collaboration, a good understanding. And I think the city is going to help save some of the trees. And we're going to get rid of the ash trees. So it was a really good meeting of the city working with the residents to make a project better. And then second, I want to thank Jim Marshall. Police publicly get knocked all the time when they make the mistakes. Last week, it went down, it couldn't have gone down better. Chief Marshall, your staff, all the folks, it went really well. And I just want to thank you and your staff for what they did. We had no loss of life. We had, as far as I don't know, injuries. It couldn't have gone better. And that shows that your staff is well trained. They know what they're doing. They responded well under stress, and they did a great job. And I just want to make sure I publicly comment them that they did a great job.
Well said.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
See?
I have nothing.
John?
Nothing.
Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to echo Councilmember Lozinski's comments. And my wife actually said that the next day she was at the Y, and the folks there that were there when that all went down had absolutely the highest praise for our police department and also for the folks from the American Red Cross who made sure that they had comfort and care when they were sheltering in place. And the systems that I understand for notification, the code red, all that worked well. Just couldn't be prouder of our police department, public safety, all the team officers that came in on the special response unit. Just couldn't be prouder and just very grateful for the leadership and the officers that we have. Thank you.
Well said, Craig. For the students in the audience, I believe Craig may be joining us from the southern hemisphere. That's why he looks like that.
That's what it is.
That's what
I haven't checked to see which way the water swirls either. Maybe I am south enough that it goes the other way.
Definitely in Stranger Things.
And
I have
Steve,
nothing.
I
Amanda,
don't have anything either.
with that, then we'll move then to the remaining items on the agenda this evening. Well, first off, we'll move to staff reports. Sharon?
I am going to be bringing on an intern starting May 6th, and this individual is going to be obtaining a master's in public administration, and he will be graduating soon from SMSU, and so I will bring him to the next council meeting to introduce him, but we'll have a schedule for him for orientation, but also have him work on some research. We got a bunch of city attorney files from the previous city attorney to go through and make sure that that's organized and we know what's in those files as one example of work to be done. And we'll offer some different opportunities, connect with staff and maybe council as well through committee meetings or commission meetings. So looking forward to that. And then just briefly, city staff met with a facilitator last week to go over a strategic plan. And we want to update it as a city. And we will be bringing forward recommendations, the facilitator will, on May 14th. It'll be immediately following the council meeting. So I believe it is on your schedule. But if not, it'll be immediately following the city council meeting on May 14th. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sharon? If not, Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. You've probably noticed the parking lot, the Addison parking lot being under construction now this week. So things are progressing nicely there. Hopefully within 3 weeks or so, that's put back together and reopened, but we'll see how that goes, weather permitting, and hoping for good things. The Whitney project, Great Plains Natural Gas has been working on that in that neighborhood to do their work in front of our contractor, D&G Excavating. We may see D&G come in as early as next week and take off the road surface with the reclaimer and on the first 2 blocks at least, from College Drive to Marshall. So we'll see how that progresses. Again, contractor schedules aren't firm yet, but just working with them. I think that's all I've got. Much like Councilman Lozinski, I'm looking forward to watching the Wolves beat the Suns again.
Good. Pam?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick so I don't delay the Wolves watching. So I just wanted the council to be aware that they'll see some just minor changes on the ordinance amendment with respect to the preliminary plat, just cleaning up some language. That was on number 14 on the consent agenda. So I'm working with staff on that.
Very good. Any questions for Pam? If not, the remaining items on the agenda you have for information, the report on our cash and investment. The Planning Commission minutes are in your packet, as well as the listing of building permits and the listing of our upcoming meetings. Is there anything else to come forward at this meeting this evening?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'd second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Amanda to adjourn discussion. If not, by voice vote, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.